Okay, so Jenny has just introduced the talk, the astrological rising sign and the purpose of the higher self. The zodiac is instrumental in the journey and growth of the soul upon the wheel of rebirth. Astrology and the great universal law of karma determine the conditions of each of our incarnations. The three crosses of astrology, related to what we call the quadruplicities, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, describe the three fundamental stages of the evolutionary journey of the higher self through matter. The experiences of the higher self, when engaged upon the mutable cross, provide diverse forms of experience driven by the factor of desire, and these serve towards opening the symbolic knowledge petals of the soul. At a later stage, when we awaken to matters spiritual, we engage upon the fixed cross, where we experience the pull of the instincts and desires on the one hand, and the archetypal energies seeking to drive us towards the fifth kingdom of souls on the other. And throughout this stage of the soul's long evolutionary journey, desire is being transmuted into spiritual aspiration. And this is when the love petals of the soul are stimulated. The final series of incarnations of the higher self upon the cardinal cross serve to unfold the sacrifice petals. This provides us with great opportunities in terms of performing acts of personal sacrifice and service to humanity and the planet itself. And this is what results in the higher initiations described by Theosophy and ultimately liberation from the wheel of rebirth. In terms of the three halls, which Helena Blavatsky mentions in her classic Voice of the Silence, the hall of ignorance we would relate to the mutable cross, the hall of learning to the fixed cross, and the cardinal cross to the final stages of the soul's journey upon the wheel of rebirth. Now, the astrological natal chart offers us a way by which we may determine our relationship to the universe, sound our own existential resonant note as part of a great cosmic symphony. The natal chart is comprised of a set of celestial instructions which can assist us towards realizing our innate potential. It is a map of the psyche, and we can relate this to the entire spectrum of human consciousness. The natal chart includes the archetypal factors derived from the influences of the planets, signs, and houses which are operative in our lives. It reveals the purpose of the higher self for the incarnation in question. It also reveals various factors within our psyche which may help or hinder us as we seek to express this. We should bear in mind that the higher self chooses an appropriate point in time and space within which to incarnate, and this is in accord with its purpose for the life ahead and the residue of karma that it's seeking to dispense with. So the natal chart, you can see my own chart there, represents our personal mandala. It is our route to wholeness of being. And the primary function of esoteric astrology, the form of astrology which I practice, is to relate us to the intent of the soul. This enables the higher self to infuse us with energy and meaning. The purpose of the soul is related to the rising sign or ascendant, that is the zodiacal sign located on the eastern horizon at the time of our birth. In my chart, for any astrologers here, you will see that Libra is my rising sign. The rising sign indicates our deepest potential and the prime source of our creative energy and wisdom. Esoteric astrology offers insight into the purpose of the soul by means of the rising sign and the triangle of energies over which it prevails. We have the rising sign itself, In this case, it's Libra. The esoteric planetary ruler, Uranus, is in the 10th house of Leo. Leo is on the cusp. And the third factor is the ruling planet of the sign on the cusp of the house where the ascendant ruler, Uranus, is located. This is the sun, which is in Scorpio in the first house, square to Uranus. I'm not here this evening to present you with astrological charts because I know you're not all astrologers, but anyone with insight into the purpose of the soul in terms of my chart, they'd say immediately there is a need to relate to the true partner, the higher self, to take effective steps to do so by keeping a spiritual diary. Libra is a sign of balance. There is a need to tread what Buddhists call the middle way, balancing one's affairs in the outer world with one's inner subjective development. The placement of Uranus informs us that there is long-standing karma to be worked off. Also, it gives me the capacity to present the wisdom teachings on stages ruled by the 10th house. Uranus is square the sun in Scorpio, which indicates that there will be challenges. It emphasizes the need to overcome desire. It brings what we call the dweller on the threshold into the equation. That's very brief, of course, and the placement of Uranus indicates that I should remain calm and steadfast in the face of challenge. For anyone who is an astrologer, that is how what we call the soul's purpose aspect is derived. Traditional astrology, as I'm sure you all know, emphasizes the placement of the sun in the horoscope. This represents our personality. In esoteric astrology, we place considerably greater emphasis upon the rising sign, although, of course, the personality is the instrument of the soul. So this evening, I'm going to consider key factors in relation to each of the 12 rising signs. So we will start, unsurprisingly, with Aries. This is the first of the zodiacal signs. It rules beginnings. Aries possesses initiating, enterprising, creative, and forceful qualities. And this renders the ram as the great pioneer of the zodiac. As the first sign, the Aries ascendant indicates the beginning of a new cycle in the soul's quest for growth. The life in question will offer one fresh avenues that they can traverse and the opportunity to breach new frontiers of consciousness. Aries and its esoteric ruler Mercury rule the mind and our attitudes. Mercury rules the psychopomp. This is the aspect of the higher self which serves as a mediator between the conscious and unconscious realms. Mercury possesses intuitive fourth ray qualities. The caduceus, that the messenger of the gods hold, and the winged helmet he wears, this represents the ability to obtain flights in consciousness to the abstract and intuitive levels of the mind, and also the capacity to receive audio-visual impressions from the higher self. So Aries rising is urged to learn and understand these messages from the soul. They may appear as symbols in dreams, meditations, or by virtue of synchronicities. Aries establishes one's identity and urge to be, and this ultimately leads one to the realizations of the teachings of the Upanishads, which state that the Atman, the true or eternal self, is also Brahman, the ultimate reality that pervades the entire universe. This is reflected in these great teachings in one of the great sayings or Mahavakyas, Tattavamasi, or thou art that. Aries rules leadership, and with Aries rising, the importance of leadership and taking initiative is emphasized. Aries rising provides a capacity for spiritual leadership. It can assist one to function as what we call a spiritual entrepreneur, where one fights to establish a lost cause. By that I mean something of spiritual value that does not necessarily offer material benefit. And Aries rising should be passionate, recognize opportunities, generate creative and innovative ideas towards these ends. And as Theosophists, we know that the expression of such qualities assists our divine essence, the monad, in its efforts to acquire spiritual staying power. Aries gives one a great capacity to project ideas, as do the other two fire ascendants, Leo and Sagittarius. The shape of the Aries glyph, its morphology, resembles a fountain, and the Aries ascendant possesses a mind which is capable of functioning like a fountain of ideas, and therefore creative thinking should always be encouraged. Aries rising should express the energies of the first ray of will and power in its three aspects: creator, maintainer, and destroyer. Aries rising should not only source the fountain of ideas to create them and then maintain their creation, but they should also know when to let it go, when it has served its purpose, where they function in a manner akin to the Hindu deity Shiva, the god of destruction and transformation. Now let's look at Taurus rising. The sign of Taurus serves to anchor spirit into matter. It's not a coincidence that Taurus is ruled by Vulcan. As the divine blacksmith, the Roman god Vulcan creates forms for use by the other gods. Of course, the wisdom teachings describe creation as a sea of fire emanating from the divine source. As the most tangible of the 12 signs, Taurus rising is advised to base their endeavors upon solid foundations. The material qualities of Taurus enable this ascendant to give stability and form to matters which are very abstract. Taurus rising can understand religious and spiritual concepts, can understand them and convey these to others in a down-to-earth way, facilitating easy understanding. This is especially relevant in acts of spiritual service, where the Taurus ascendant can provide solidity and constancy to abstract spiritual teachings, illustrating their value and their practical application. Anatomically, Taurus rules the throat and therefore the voice. We say that Taurus rising can beautify the planet through the spoken word. Taurus rules channels, and if correctly utilized, the energies of this sign can enable the Taurus ascendant to function as a channel for the spiritualizing energies of the inner worlds. Taurus rules our possessions and resources, and Taurus rising is particularly challenged towards making correct use of material resources and possessions without becoming attached to them. They must learn that true security comes from within. Taurus rising bestows ability in the use of money and resources, but the challenge here is to function as a custodian for these, marshalling and dispensing with these in ways that emphasize spiritual expediency. So rather than accumulating possessions and resources, Taurus should function as a channel for the numinous energies of the higher planes. The placement of Vulcan, the esoteric ruler of Taurus, in the natal chart will reveal ways in which its first ray energies can serve to assist us in overcoming attachments and matters in life that restrict or inhibit the native spiritual expression. So Taurus rules values. And when Taurus is rising, the need to develop a spiritually based value system is especially emphasized. This enables one then to base their life endeavors upon spiritual values, making deposits into the bank of the soul for subsequent use, both in this life and in succeeding ones. Taurus rising never feels completely free. They're innately aware of the restrictions imposed upon them by life in the material world. Taurus rules the restrictive condition of resentment, and Taurus rising is especially advised to guard against this. Of course, anyone on the spiritual path, but particularly the Taurus ascendant, should be aware that the soul chooses the circumstances of one's incarnation most appropriate in terms of promoting spiritual growth, whether this appears favorable from a more cursory material view or whether it doesn't. Gemini rising. Gemini rules dualities, Castor and Pollux, the mortal Castor, the immortal Pollux. And the challenge is to bring these together, soul and personality. The duality of Gemini rising can create a split within the individual. It can create oscillations between extremes within the psyche. But when the psyche is fully integrated, these oscillations are maintained in a dynamic equilibrium. This creates a highly creative, unifying third factor. Gemini rising must bring matters in life together for comparison, as a means of then creating unity out of duality. Spiritual truth embraces opposites. It's found not on the level of duality, but by the experience of the underlying oneness. The highly energized mind of the Gemini ascendant can arouse intense conflicts between one's higher and lower nature. A classic representation of this is found in the symbolism in the Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the allegorical war between the good and righteous Pandavas, i.e., one's higher spiritual nature, and the self-serving Kauravas, the lower nature driven by desire. Gemini is ruled by Venus and it governs learning and teaching. The world is very much a learning ground for this rising sign, and it's very likely that in some way or another, teaching is related to the purpose of the soul. This is due to the powerful influence of the second ray of love wisdom. Second ray souls aspire towards teaching, or if not healing, or serving humanity in some way. Gemini is a sign of language and communication, and Gemini rising provides one with gifts in these areas. The ability to assess and communicate ideas is especially pronounced, whilst the gift for communication enables one to express their inner intent through things such as art, poetry, and literature. As well as being adept at language, the mental dexterity of Gemini rising can assist one in creating a dialogue with the higher self through the language of symbols. Symbolism, of course, is another language. Gemini rules short journeys, and highly advanced aspirants born under this rising sign are given the opportunity to undertake the journey to the soul via what we call the Antakarana. Venus rules the Antakarana, and every aspirant, but particularly Gemini rising, must build this through spiritual disciplines, especially meditation and the practice of abstract thought. There is a famous spiritual aphorism, not that we should live in this world less, but in both worlds more. And the Gemini ascendant, due to its flexibility and dexterity, is particularly adept in this respect. There's a marked capacity to use mental agility, both in the affairs of the outer world, but also within the psyche, functioning like a spiritual gymnast, moving with ease between the inner and outer worlds. And Venus, the esoteric ruler here, serves to manifest the transcendentals of Socrates, described by Plato as truth, beauty, and goodness. It does this through Gemini more than any other planet. Venus brings the light of the higher mind to humanity, offering higher reason. loving intelligence, and the resolution of duality that is found within our lower mind. Cancer rising. Cancer rules domesticity, and when this sign is found on the eastern horizon at birth, one is exhorted to render their house of the personality as a suitable residence for the soul or higher self. Cancer rising must learn to relate to matters that are intangible and amorphous. This sign is naturally sensitive and it has a subjective predisposition. And if the Cancer ascendant can use this correctly, one can become sensitive and receptive to impressions by the higher self. This is a sign of motherhood, care, and the capacity to nurture things. And these qualities for Cancer rising are related to the expression of the soul's intent in some shape or form. The Cancer ascendant is sensitive to the spiritual infant that lies within, that is, one's divine potential, and this requires sheltering and nurturing to enable its growth and expression in the outer world. Cancer rising is also advised to nurture what we call seed thoughts in meditation, relating to things that they wish to materialize in the outer world. This accords with one of the rays governing Cancer, the seventh ray of ceremonial order and ritual, whose primary function is to spiritualize matter by giving tangible form to things that lie within. This then fulfills the magical condition of this ray. So Cancer is sensitive and intuitive, and this greatly aids creativity. In esoteric astrology, we place art and music, as well as use of the imagination, under the domain of Cancer. And Cancer rising will commonly possess talents here. Neptune rules music, and when direct in the natal chart, the native is suited towards musicianship. When Neptune is retrograde, musical composition is especially favored. Cancer rules Maya, or illusion, that which renders the underlying one divine life as many separate and distinct lives, and the affairs of our transient phenomenal world as real and enduring. The Cancer ascendant is advised strongly to be wary of the mist of Maya, and is very much challenged to penetrate this. And due to its sensitivity, Cancer rising possesses a natural tendency to withdraw and to sidestep issues in a manner akin to the movement of a crab. And men born with Cancer ascendant may experience, or perhaps at least perceive, difficulty expressing their masculinity. My mentor, Douglas Baker, he would advise men born with Cancer rising to avoid entering areas such as bodybuilding as an escape, where they construct a striking, very impressive crab-like outer shell. And sadly, this can serve as a psychological impediment to impressions by the higher self. Cancer also governs the masses of humanity, and Cancer rising bestows universal concern and a natural sensitivity to the needs of humanity. The evolved Cancer ascendant possesses great vision here and the capacity to easily attune to the feelings of others. They can operate as an effective leader of the common people. We come to Leo rising. Leo, as in traditional astrology, is ruled by the sun, and we say Leo rising should function like a miniature sun, like the star at the heart of our solar system. The Leo ascendant is naturally warm and radiant, and their energies should sustain and illuminate the lives of others. Leo rising is governed particularly with the first ray of will and power and the second ray of love wisdom. These are complementary to each other. And Leo rising must implement the expression of these two energies. This sign as an ascendant, demands a creative expression of both love and will. This should manifest as mercy expressing love and justice. Mercy expressing love and justice expressing power. This is achieved by Leo rising blending the gentle effusive energies of the second ray with the forceful, assertive, dynamic energies of the first ray. Leo rules the heart, and Leo rising does best when effectively coming from the heart, as we say. Whilst this is important to all of us on the spiritual path, the development and expression of heart chakra qualities are particularly emphasized under Leo rising. Leo is ruled by the sun, and it's a circular glyph, and it emphasizes the importance of this sign achieving psychological wholeness. The attainment of wholeness entails the various components of one's psyche being put together, integrated into an effective functioning whole. And Leo rising must gain insight into the various psychological drives that exist within their personality and learn to control these, guide them towards positive forms of expression and personality integration. Leo rules royalty, and Leo rising should seek to bring out noble qualities in others. And very importantly, when Leo is rising, we say that one must give sovereignty of their life to the soul or higher self. Set the ego aside, get it out of the way, let the higher self wear the crown of consciousness. Leo rules children, and Leo rising tends to retain childlike qualities throughout their life. The archetype of the child god described in mythology, which we call for the male the pure eternus, and the female equivalent being the puella eterna, is very relevant here. And if this is expressed positively, this manifests as what we might call spiritual innocence, where a new, fresh approach to life provides great potential for psychological growth. Negatively, however, if the Leo ascendant refuses to grow up and confront life's challenges, expecting these to be resolved by extraneous means, there will be little psycho-spiritual growth. Leo rules cycles, things that go round and round, and there is a tendency for Leo rising to go around in circles. We say that they are challenged to learn important lessons the first time around, rather than having to repeat them. We come to Virgo. Virgo rules service, and when this is rising in the chart, this is very strongly emphasized. We say that the Virgo ascendant should function as a spiritual waiter or waitress, whereby they effectively serve spiritual food in the form of spiritual teachings or healing, very much for the benefit of humanity. Virgo rules work, and the aspirant with Virgo rising should, and commonly is, prepared to endure hard work in offering essentially important service to others. This is performed without the need for self-aggrandizement or thought of recognition or reward. Due to the marked emphasis here upon spiritual service, when the highly evolved Virgo ascendant is prepared to work in the background and not in a position of importance, there is an opportunity for great spiritual growth. So Virgo rising enables the soul's purpose to be suitably expressed in the area of health. Indeed, people born with Virgo rising and Virgo sun display an interest in health matters and an above average concern for their own well-being in the form of hygiene, diet, and that of others. This is a sign of purity and refinement, and this is emphasized in the life of Virgo rising. Virgo rising is challenged to maintain purity in their attitudes, regardless of what is going on in the surrounding environment. Indeed, they possess a deep urge to enter into the virgin purity of the abode of the higher self. As a means of establishing connections here, a process of spiritual cleansing is required. These are all Virgoan things. There is also an innate love of purity and chastity, and this renders it easier for Virgo rising to adopt what we would call a celibate lifestyle. And this can bring about transmutation of sexual energy as a favorable spiritual discipline. Virgo rising is highly analytical, and when this is applied to spiritual matters, they're very well equipped in terms of self-analysis, applying discrimination, discerning between matters in the psyche that are relevant to the soul's intent and those which are not. And this is a great asset in terms of working upon oneself so that the personality can then function as a spiritual instrument. Virgo rules the Madonna and child, and the Virgo ascendant demands that the aspirant care and nurture the inner child as a means of expressing its intent. We have here Mary and Jesus, Isis and Horus, Maya Devi and Siddhartha, and so on. Indeed, Virgo rising should consider oneself as a personality who is effectively the mother of the Christ child within. My own rising sign now, Libra. Libra rules partnerships, and partnerships serve to compensate for our own deficiencies. And through the experiences that we gain here, they provide an opportunity for us to learn about the dynamics and processes of our psyche. When Libra is rising, it is very helpful for the aspirant to be involved in a genuine marriage of two minds. This can assist the Libra ascendant in terms of feeling more psychologically whole and finding a suitable direction in life. Of course, whilst partnerships in the outer world are of great value, our most important partnership is with the inner partner, the soul or higher self. And this is especially emphasized when Libra is rising, the realization that the true partner is the soul. Libra rules bridges, and Libra rising is exhorted to build this bridge to the higher self, which we call the Antakarana. It also rules books, so the keeping of a spiritual diary to assist here, keeping a record of one's dreams, meditations, and efforts in spiritual service. The Libra ascendant should demonstrate equilibrium and poise in their life and should seek to reconcile opposing tendencies, both within their own psyche and in the outer world. They are the great diplomats. The Libra ascendant should seek to balance the spiritual aspect of their being with the material part, always creating and maintaining this balance here as they follow the middle path, what the Buddhists call the middle way. Libra is a sign governing the law, and this ascendant is very concerned with fairness and justice. We say they must work within the law. They are required to live not by the letter of the law, but by the spirit of the law, i.e., they should live in accord with spiritual laws rather than those that are simply man-made. Libra rules the motor car, a symbol for the personality, the driver here being the higher self. And the Libran ascendant should live their life as a long open road for the soul to travel along. They should definitely avoid what is a natural tendency to embrace comfort and ease, seeking an easy life where they sit on the fence or are sidelined in a metaphorical lay-by or cul-de-sac. It is a natural tendency for the Libra ascendant to always take the easy option, the voice of experience here. Libra rules locks and keys which can open them. And when Libra is on the ascendant, it indicates that the individual requires a suitable key to unlock the wisdom teachings. Of course, there are many here, psychological, astrological, alchemical, numerological. However, these are not fully accessible to the inexperienced or irresponsible. So, Librarian, to attain this key, one must accomplish spiritual maturity, at which stage the key is given to them. Scorpio rising. When Scorpio is on the ascendant, challenges in life, of which there are likely to be many, should be viewed as opportunities for spiritual growth. Scorpio rules the phoenix, which rises from the ashes of its demise as a self-centered personality, soaring towards the sun, the symbol of one's spiritual essence. Scorpio rules heroism. It also rules processes of elimination. And Scorpio rising then offers one great potential for transformation, providing they can overcome the obstacles that are thrown at them. Also aspects of that within their psyche that impede further spiritual growth. Included here is the elimination of habits and attitudes that one has developed over previous lives. Opportunities for regeneration may arise very suddenly, but they will appear when Scorpio is rising. This sign possesses the capacity to emerge regenerated and renewed from the most awful situations. The spiritual Scorpio rising does not have an easy life. The ascendant implies great effort, and when this is employed towards serving humanity and towards one's spiritual transformation, this is always rewarded, at least eventually. And this rising sign greatly emphasizes the confrontation between what we might call the warrior soul and the dweller on the threshold. There are going to be challenges here. Of course, when soul contact is adequately established, the angel of the presence and the dweller stand face to face, and the aspirant must act. So this is probably we call it the toughest of the rising signs. It's best equipped in terms of coping and flourishing under testing circumstances. They have this ability to keep picking themselves up off the floor, and then they come back fighting with greater strength. On a more mundane level, it's inadvisable to fall out with a Scorpio ascendant. They tend not to let things go very easily. Scorpio rising, though, it can lose metaphorical battles, spiritual battles again and again, but ultimately can gain victory. They are able to draw on vast reserves of strength and courage, especially when they are faced with critical situations. So Scorpio rising implies great struggles, difficulties, tests, and personal trials as one seeks to express spiritual qualities. Positively, the energies of the ruling planet Mars can be used to clear and destroy matters in the Scorpio ascendant's life and psyche that block the expression of the soul's intent. And this rising sign does best when they plan things. They are adept at planning. A well-devised plan represents a recipe for success. Victory for the higher self is best achieved this way. I mentioned Kurukshetra and the opposing armies under the Gemini rising, but often for Scorpio rising, their life is a veritable Kurukshetra. And of course, the challenge is to realize that conflict is between the higher self and the lower nature, and not to project it out onto circumstances in the outer world, where then one becomes in conflict with others. Scorpio rising should learn to expect the unexpected. Things happen suddenly, including sudden insight from the higher self, and illumination and spiritual enlightenment for this rising sign is likely to happen very suddenly. They are powerful, and other people like to be around them because they intuit their vast reservoirs of inner strength. Sagittarius is the sign that rules aspiration and also orientation. And the archer must have a target, preferably something to aspire towards, to direct one's arrows of aspiration. The major underlying theme of this sign is direction, and the lack of a suitable target leads to what we call spiritual delinquency, where one has nothing to focus their spiritual energies upon, and they are then expressed inappropriately. This is a real higher expression of what we call standard delinquency, where you have youths hanging around in street corners because they lack aspiration in their lives, and then their energies are expressed inappropriately. So Sagittarius rising must orientate their life to the intent of the soul. The Sagittarian arrow resembles a sign, and Sagittarius rising will receive what we call signposts on the path that they must act upon, whether these occur within one's physiology, whether they relate to events and circumstances in the outer world or psychological matters. They all present opportunities for one to obtain guidance and direction. Sagittarius rising provides the impulse to explore distant lands. Anyone who studies Orthodox astrology will know that this is the sign that rules long distance travel. We say that Sagittarius rising can explore distant lands out there in the physical world, but also within the inner worlds. One thing they must guard against is wanderlust, where they're constantly seeking change and new adventures for their own ends. This is an ascendant that often has great difficulty completing what they start. Before they succeed in one thing, they tend to be off on another adventure before all the loose ends have been tied up. This is a sign that rules questing, and an appropriate symbol for Sagittarius rising is the knight questing for the Grail. The Grail, of course, is a symbol for the higher self. The various tests and trials that the knights encounter represent aspects of the psyche that must be transformed, so the questing aspirant can proceed towards attaining the sacred chalice of the soul. Sagittarius is represented by an archer who is half human and half horse. This is a mythological centaur. And Sagittarius rising must learn what we call practical lessons in life, whereby they can become psychologically whole. The lower nature must be overcome and transmuted so that the spiritual aspect of one's being prevails. The lower half, the centaur, symbolizes instincts and desires, and of course the human half, higher nature. The wise centaur Chiron, for anyone who studies Greek myths, demonstrates how the two natures, higher and lower, can become finally balanced and integrated. Sagittarius is ruled by the earth. We always place this opposite the sun in the natal chart. And the earth signifies where the personality lacks wholeness and requires refining, so it can be harnessed to the intent of the soul. Sagittarius is governed by the fourth, fifth, and sixth rays. The fourth ray informs them of the value of things such as art and music. The fifth ray, the importance of analysis, careful analysis and discernment. And the sixth ray, idealism and devotion, gives them the ability to focus that arrow on something that we may describe as higher or spiritual. The earth is governed by the third ray, and this is the most adaptable of the rays, and it gives the Sagittarian an ability to adapt to the demands of the path. The placement of the earth can also indicate where the presence of somebody more spiritually advanced, we call it an elder brother or sister, can assist the aspirant in their spiritual expression. Capricorn. The astrological key phrase for the sign of Capricorn is that of I use, and Capricorn rising possesses a marked capacity to use their various life experiences and the lessons they learn here towards attaining their higher objectives. This ascendant is always gaining a higher synthesis of meaning. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the great teacher, governed by the third ray. And this assists the Capricorn ascendant towards gaining a psychological synthesis and integration. These come under Saturn and Capricorn. And as Theosophists, we know that this is a necessary prelude towards initiation. Capricorn rules success which endures. And when Capricorn is on the ascendant, spiritual achievement is emphasized. However, this does not come easily and tends to come later in life. Capricorn rising often experiences great difficulty in expressing their potential. There are long bouts of what we call spiritual castration, where they must endure the incapacity to produce something that is successful or important. But Capricorn rules patience, endurance, responsibility, self-discipline. And these things are all key towards the attainment of the objectives of this sign. Capricorn rules what we call the third initiations, which we symbolize as a mountainous ascent. Mountains are ruled by Capricorn, and very appropriately, Capricorn is symbolized by the mountain goat, which can leap from one narrow ledge on a mountainside to another, regardless of the fact that the mountain round about them is disintegrating. And this is very true for one treading the path. They tend to have great challenges in life and things tend to fall apart. But these serve to educate one as to the futility of identifying with the illusory circumstances of the material world and to focus on matters eternal. Capricorn rising possesses a spiritual maturity beyond their years, and they have a natural conscience. They have a serious disposition which favors introversion and study. Capricorn and Saturn rule what we call long-standing karma, that which extends back over many lives. And when Capricorn is rising, long-standing karma is always emphasized. Aesop's fable, The Tortoise and the Hare, typifies Capricorn rising and their capacity for success. Here, the ponderous tortoise symbolizes how the slow, careful, persistent qualities of Capricorn and Saturn eventually triumph. Capricorn rising can be somewhat tortoise-like, moving slowly but very surely. The hare here symbolizes the individual who may take only a cursory glance at spiritual teachings, grasping aspects of them that nourish their personality. And such individuals are not suited to what we call initiation because of spiritual immaturity. They lack the necessary experience and psychological integration. We must be aware that the higher self responds to immortal laws, which often differ to those relating to our personality. And one who dashes around hare-like, completing nothing, is the antithesis of Capricorn rising. Aquarius is the sign of the water bearer who pours out the symbolic waters of knowledge for the purpose of slaking the thirst of the spiritual seeker. The astrological key phrase for Aquarius is I know, and this accentuates the primacy of knowledge in our new Aquarian age, this superseding I believe in the Piscean age. An Aquarius rising must base their life endeavors upon and disseminate to others actual knowledge rather than matters based upon belief. Aquarius rising emphasizes what we call existentialism. human freedom, personal responsibility, and the individual's need to make their own choices. This ascendant emphasizes the great injunction of Delphi, know thyself. True knowledge is found within. We require knowledge of our psyche if we are to succeed on the spiritual path. When we know ourselves, we can change ourselves. And as potential water bearers, we must truly know ourselves if we are to pour forth wisdom that will satisfy the thirst of those around us. Aquarius bestows objectivity and detachment, and this is always underlined when Aquarius is rising. These individuals should always maintain an objective viewpoint. This will enable them to operate at the level of the mind rather than that of the lower emotions. As Theosophists, we know that when one is mentally polarized, it counteracts the effects of what we call karma manas, or mind contaminated by desire. Through the influence of the fifth ray of concrete knowledge science, its analytical qualities, Aquarius rising tends to fare very well when they engage in what we call disidentification exercises, adopting the role of the witness or detached observer, where they then perform an objective appraisal of their various personality attributes so that they can thereafter go about the process of spiritual transformation. Aquarius rising likes to classify, divide, and control matters. If there's a problem, the content of the problem tends to be broken down into pieces and then analyzed and more easily controlled. And this reflects the qualities of the two rays governing Aquarius, the fifth ray of concrete knowledge and science and the seventh ray of ceremonial order and ritual. Aquarius rules groups. And groups will be a prominent feature of the new age. An Aquarius rising should always identify with the purpose of any group they are involved with. And the Aquarian ascendant is best equipped of all towards functioning successfully within a group whose common goal is to offer service to humanity. As suggested by its glyph, the zigzag, Aquarius rules circumstances which fluctuate, metaphorical ups and downs. An Aquarius rising suggests a mind that will oscillate between what we call ego inflation and ego alienation. And all aspirants, and particularly the Aquarian ascendant, should be aware that these fluctuations are a necessary part of the soul's growth. Aquarius is ruled by Jupiter, whose glyph resembles a swan, and it emphasizes a requirement of Aquarius rising here, as symbolized in the Hindu teachings, where the swan floats calmly on the waters of life, regardless of what is going on round about them. And Aquarius rising should very much be swan-like when they are confronted by these fluctuations. Pisces rising. The Piscean ascendant emphasizes the concept of dharma, or spiritual duty, and the need to make sacrifices for the betterment of others. We say with Pisces rising, if one's dharma is not adhered to, the resultant effect is one of what we call self-undoing, where escapist tendencies lead to one being effectively sacrificed due to them falling prey to self-induced acts of personal sabotage, commonly occurring through things such as alcohol, drugs, and other addictive substances. Pisces is the sign that rules the unconscious, things that are hidden and unknown. And the Piscean ascendant and sun sign are especially sensitive to the energies of the unconscious. They are like sponges here. This relates both to higher levels of the unconscious, what Robert Assagioli called the superconscious, what we would call Atma Buddhi and Manas, as well as astral content of a low chthonic nature. And Pisces rising often has to metaphorically go through its personal hell to then achieve its paradise. Pisces rising often finds it difficult to establish their own boundaries and indeed their own identity, because they possess a tendency to easily absorb the thoughts and feelings of those that they come in contact with. Therefore, they can play many roles in life due to the influence of others. And this, of course, creates problems in establishing who they are. The key phrase of Pisces, as I said earlier, is I believe. And Pisces rising, if the energies are used positively, provides an opportunity for one to question their beliefs and, if necessary, to destroy false idols. This is especially so when the ruling planet Pluto is retrograde in the chart. This accentuates one's iconoclastic tendencies. Pisces rising feel deep compassion and empathy for others, particularly those who are suffering in their lives or in a metaphorical dark place. This renders Pisces rising as very well equipped to function within institutions or any area of life where they're effectively saving souls. Pisces rising should find an ideal and direct their energies towards it. Lost hope causes as well here, as with Aries, something which is spiritually valued but doesn't necessarily offer worldly achievement or success. They should seek to bring the sacred dimension of the unconscious into their daily life and then applying this in service to others. The study of mythology can greatly assist Pisces rising because mythology is a representation of archetypes, divine ideas that reside within the collective unconscious. I say this because everything with Pisces is deep and hidden. And if they can find mythological counterparts to their own life and its circumstances, the opportunities and challenges, this is very, very helpful. It can assist them in ascertaining the purpose of the incarnation at hand. So this evening, I've gone over a number of matters related to the rising signs.